What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Our Future Podcast by Morning Brew. On this pod, me and my co-founder and co-host Simi break down some of the coolest young entrepreneurs building amazing businesses, and we analyze their tactics, strategies, and insights so that you can learn a few things about it as well. Simi and I sold our first business when we were at the ages of 22 and 24, and we also throw in our own insights and knowledge from being young killers who've made a little mark on our space. So excited to get into this one. We have two really interesting entrepreneurs. The first, a venture-backed company out of France. It's got nothing to do with LVMH. It's actually in the CRM space. And the next company is actually fully bootstrapped. The kid behind it built a lead generation business in the real estate category that does hundreds of thousands, if not millions, per year. So excited to get into this one. Simi, we've got a lot of knowledge on the CRM space. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of info on sales tech and MarTech. I just feel like it fits right in our domain. And, it's a cool story because Salesforce stock may be getting killed, but something unique and cool is happening in France. And maybe they can turn the wave around.
Excuse my French because I'm in France. Hit me with the first story.
Let's do it. So for our first story today, we have this entrepreneur out of France. He's in his late 20s. His name is Simo Lemhandez. He is building a next-gen CRM tool called Folk. So unlike other CRM tools that are really just focused on sales, he's building an all-in-one tool for all of your relationships. So sales, recruiting, partnerships, investors. And it feels very Notion-like, great UI, and they've raised millions of dollars from, investment firms like Accel and tons of big operators in the space. But I think it's really, really cool because it feels like it is a new age tool. There's a lot of workflow tools. They have enrichment and prospecting built within the platform. And they make it really, really easy to just see all of the relationships that you have stored. And it's a very cross-functional tool. So if other people on the team need to use those data, those contacts, or see who's connected with those people, it makes it really, really easy to have that visibility and then access the contacts and the prospects that you're trying to get in touch with.
There's a few things I think are really interesting. The first is it's super easy to use. It's designed just like Notion. So it's really got that kind of Gen Z aesthetic and kind of simple database features. And the next thing is I think this really is a great tool for startups and early stage companies because there's more that matters when you're building a company in terms of your connections than just sales prospects. Think about your investors. Think about connections of your investors. Think about operators you may want to talk to when building your business. This really is an all-encompassing CRM platform that doesn't just focus on the leads your salespeople are turning up, but rather a kind of high-level, all-inclusive picture of all the different experts that your business can get in contact with when it comes to the next priority on the company's agenda.
Dude, totally. And it's impressive because I believe they won, product of the year on Product Hunt. So these are very sharp founders. I mean, they've really nailed it on the design side, the UI side. And they've spent a lot of time. I believe they spent months just talking to, founders in different spaces and really trying to understand the problems they faced. And, they had previously worked at some kind of incubator or studio. So, they really had a good sense of the kind of problems that folks were facing, when it came to managing their relationships. And I'll tell you, one tool that I've always thought would be really helpful is something around intros, right? So, you're at a company and you have, 5 people, 10 people, 200 people on your team, doesn't matter how big it is. But, between everybody, you're maybe 1 to 2 degrees away from that prospect that you want to get in touch with and potentially can have a warm intro. But I just haven't found a tool that really makes that seamless. And so, this idea of managing relationships and knowing who's connected to who, and it's very visible and you can build out these workflows. And it's very easy to do so, I thought could be really, really valuable. And maybe that's kind of the next step of where a platform like this goes.
I think every company really needs its own internal database product for who knows who, because we can't rely on LinkedIn anymore. LinkedIn's just become such a big social media platform that many people have thousands of followers and thousands, tens of thousands of connections to people they've never spoken to in their life. So you get to a point where, okay, I have my coworker who knows this guy, but they don't really know them. So I
Right.
think, every company putting in that work to figure out who knows who actually is going to be a super valuable sales mechanism for the business, especially as cold outbound gets harder and, warm intros get more of a premium on them than ever, as a sales tactic. So I think these guys did a lot of interesting things. One interesting note that I read about them is that they raised from big VC firms like Accel, but they also raised from 35 different operators across the sales tech landscape. And I think that really speaks volumes to the mission of their company, right? Which is, kind of a broad, high level CRM of many different connections from many different walks of life. And they kind of have it, they kind of got it how they live it. You know what I mean? And that they also embrace this kind of all encompassing strategy to build their own business, which was to rely on many different experts and operators and then to tap into their network of connections. So I thought that was a interesting note that maybe raising from individuals as well as big VCs can really end up opening a lot more doors for your business in the long run.
Well, operators are a strong signal. And I think that if you have operators on your cap table that are working at companies that you would want to partner with, those are cheat codes into themselves, right? So if you have the VP of product or the VP of sales or whoever on your cap table, they're probably going to find a way for you two to work together. And
Yeah.
so I love that because not only are they, invested in your success, but you can have them as a sound advisor and they can really make it easier for you to be able to sell into enterprise when typically it may take you 6, 12, 18 months to get your foot in the door otherwise.
Yeah. Something else I read was just Superhuman, that really advanced email platform that's
Yeah.
supposed to be a step change above Gmail.
Yeah, it's like
They
email
also
on
embraced
steroids. Yeah.
Yeah, email on roids. They also embraced this white glove onboarding, which means that there was a very genteel human that walked you through the process of getting involved in the platform. And I think that's a missing touch that a lot of these big players have because, again, a CRM is probably a business's most important software tool in the grand scheme of things because it translates directly to revenue. And being able to operate it and understand it intimately and kind of get up to speed on customizing it, I think is one of the big challenge for small and medium sized businesses and startups to just to get their sales orgs running.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard this growing debate of sorts where people have said, they're tired of demos and they don't want, this process that has a lot of friction where they got to, meet with someone on the team and then they got to be walked through. People are really wanting self-serve type platforms where, if they want to buy something, they should be able to just use it immediately and be able to figure it out and experiment themselves. So, that's kind of some pushback I would have is that direction the way software is headed is maybe less of this personal touch and more of just let me experiment and play around with it because a lot of these type of platforms are kind of operating in a PLG type motion, so product led growth, right? So they're selling at the consumer level. The hope is someone adopts it and then they kind of move upwards towards enterprise.
Yeah, I think that also comes with a slippery slope though, because they have 2,000 paying customers among 100,000 users, right? So that's only 2%. So I think that
Which is
maybe if the
pretty
product,
common. That's
okay,
pretty common though for these kind of tools. Yeah. It's they're expecting, you probably have a
hmm,
million people using the product and then a small percentage of them actually paying. But there's a lot of room to grow with the people who are paying, right? Because if they really
hmm.
find value in that product, they'll pay hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, especially if you're selling an enterprise.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think a personal touch is needed though. Cuz even if it is a self-serve platform, a lot of these founders do give demos, IRL or over Zoom. Um and with this white glove onboarding approach, you are getting a human to kind of tell you what's good.
Well, let me ask you though, if you were signing up for a platform like this, would you want to be walked through a demo? Would you want to hop on
Abs-
a call with somebody?
Absolutely. I remember the experience. I never actually converted to superhuman, but just cuz I was making my name in the tech circles. I got a few people to give me that early intro link or referral, and I remember I got emails from a human very personally written, hey, we're really excited to get you up to speed with the platform. Just here's my Calendly link, and we can get started. So I actually really appreciated that, and I do find myself a bit in analysis paralysis, and a little bit of trepidation when I arrive at a new software platform. Sometimes I'll watch like YouTube videos and demos and stuff like that, but it just doesn't feel the same. I would love to have like a human really tell me, what's going on.
That's interesting. I think if someone was like, hey, would you like a demo to this platform? I don't know if I'd want to take it, because I think if they really have focused on the UI and it is very simple to use, it should feel intuitive once I'm even on it, right? Like if it's a very simple platform in the sense of, hey, you use this to manage all of your relationships and it feels like Notion. I know going into it what I need to be able to expect. And I think if I requires a pretty steep learning curve in general to figure that out, like I just don't know if I'd be using it as much, because to me, if I'm trying to integrate this across my entire team and I can't figure it out, well, am I going to like try to go through that extra friction of now trying to teach other people on the team and stuff? So I feel like for it to really be collaborative and get those people who don't really like using new tools, it needs to be very simple and intuitive. And they need to be able to figure out how to use it in the first 2-3 minutes, or else like getting that, team-wide adoption is going to be really, really hard, because I just feel like you're going to meet a lot of resistance.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this. This is a good debate, right? Because if you look at some of these other, like we just like downloaded Clay for our own sales stuff. And like, I found that very hard to use. So, but that's a very powerful platform. The more advanced like a platform is, the harder it's going to be to use, so it actually brings up an interesting story. I'm releasing a video this week on Atlassian, the story of that company, $40 billion software giant. Yeah. And there was a core insight that led to the growth of that business, which was these two Australian guys, and they built a debugging tool called Jira for software developers. It's still huge. And they noticed that American Airlines found their website, bought their product, put in their credit card, and started using it without a single human touch. And that's what enabled Atlassian to become what it was. The strategy was build, software, sell it relatively cheap, and you don't need huge teams of salespeople and humans to essentially like spend months walking people in these long sales cycles and teaching them the software, just like off the shelf product-led growth. And that's really what Atlassian created, was product-led growth. Those guys did it before anybody else. So that really speaks to what you were saying, right? Is just have something that people can get started with and get moving with without the need for that human side of things. But obviously I'd say with like, for example, I just helped my girlfriend with her business download HubSpot and get up to speed on that. And somebody reached out to me directly and I'm like, you should definitely take this call to kind of like learn how to use the platform, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
But I know it's going to be valuable.
Yeah. I guess it just depends on like, maybe one factor of this is, are you completely new to this? Is this the first time you're using a tool like this, or are you moving over from a competing platform? I wanted to talk a little bit about just how impressed I am with these entrepreneurs in, countries like France and Canada. They are powerhouses. There is this entrepreneur, his name is Guillaume, and I'm going to butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to try it. But he is the founder of a company called Lempire. And they are doing some really, really interesting stuff. I mean, he grew that business from $0 to $20 million ARR in like 5 years. I think they were valued at over 150 mil last time I checked, and they took $30 million off the table for themselves. But they've essentially built this holding company of various sales tech and MarTech tools. So, I think they started one or two of them and they bought the rest. I think there's 5 or 6 businesses in this holding empire of sorts that they're trying to build. They have like Lemcal and Lemlist, which are like competitors that like very popular tools like Calendly. They have, I think, Lemwarm too, which is like a warm email automation tool. And then they bought Taplio and they bought Tweet Hunter. And so they've built this ecosystem where they've just built repeatable processes. And I think this is kind of their strategy, right? So they're big on influencers. They use that to grow all of their tools, but they build businesses and buy businesses that follow around that growth framework. So if it's a tool
oh my God,
that can't be grown by, their B2B influencer strategy and network, they're probably not going to buy it, or they're probably not going to grow it. And so they have this like engine that they have, and they just keep throwing businesses in there and they grow super, super quickly. So Yeah, I think
Dude,
when they
what is
bought,
it? What is it with the
yeah.
French and holding companies with incredible synergies between brands, man? So this guy's like the Bernard Arnault of micro SaaS. I love it. That's a cool
Yeah,
story.
yeah, and I think what they're doing is a little hard to replicate because you do need to have that like infrastructure in place. Like I think if you were trying to go build 5 companies at once, that would be really hard. You need to have that one entry company that like you can really build very big, build out the processes and systems, and then you go expand and you go do buy to company number 2, buy number 3, buy number 4, buy number 5.
Dude, that's an
Yeah,
interesting take. Yeah, before we move on to the next story, I was recently reading a interview about this lady. She founded a company called Shippo, which is essentially just helps Shopify storefronts with their infrastructure logistics. And
yeah,
she was saying that like the process of go to market never ends. So you'll bring your product to market, you'll get users, you'll grow it, but then as a CEO, you constantly have to be looking for the next product line, the next market to tap into. And I think that guy Guillaume did it very well, and that they probably had a hero product to get into the software business, but then
definitely.
realized,
Yeah.
there's tons of other market space.
Well,
Yeah.
theirs is very adjacent to the work that they're already doing. It doesn't cannibalize their other products per se, but it's very similar across the value chain. And I think that's actually how they think about it. Is like, oh, wait, we're also doing this in our sales automation tech stack. Why don't we just build it? I think that company is going to be really interesting to watch in the coming years. And I also feel the same about like Canadian entrepreneurs. I don't know, like they're just kind of hiding in their huts,
Yeah.
like away
Well,
from
there's something to be
society, and
said
they're
of
crushing.
there's something to be said about being outside the Silicon Valley echo chamber, right? Like
Yeah.
Atlassian, what I was just talking, they're in Australia, right? So I don't know. I give these European entrepreneurs a pat on the back.
Absolutely.
But to
Cool.
shift to an American, I think I'm ready to talk about the next story. So I want to tell you about this 28-year-old guy named Jack Sory. He works less than 15 hours a week and makes hundreds of thousands per year running a lead gen business for real estate called ConvertWire. So when Jack was in college, he noticed that real estate agents were willing to pay for good leads. There was a lot of demand there, but the real estate industry was going really hard on digital. Jack was noticing that a lot of the prospective sellers and buyers captured on websites, forums, and emails were really low quality. And what his core insight was is that you really have to talk to someone who's willing to buy or sell a home to know if they're truly a qualified lead. Um, so then he knew he could charge thousands of dollars a month if he could give real estate companies, enough of these, really qualified buyers and sellers. So he embarks on this journey of building a team of cold callers based in the Philippines. So the magic of his business was finding this like really good first contractor hire over there, and then having that guy train and recruit his friends to become sales killers as well. So fast forward a few years, Jack's business sells packages of leads for between 1 and 3,000 a month. So it's a subscription-based productized service. And what I love about Jack's story is that he really embodies the freedoms that an unsexy business can buy you. He's traveled the world pretty extensively over the course of running this business for like 5 years. And while revenues have varied year to year based on the kind of effort he puts in personally, the business has consistently done between $500,000 and $1 million a year. So definitely a great example of a business that took a ton of sweat and hard work to build, but gives the lifestyle freedoms that young entrepreneurs dream of. So I learned a ton when I talked to Jack, and I think he has a lot of really interesting and smart takes on being a young entrepreneur and kind of building a lifestyle business that's fully bootstrapped and that he owns 100% of.
That's great, man. I love these businesses built off a specific vertical because I think lead gen agencies and services exist for various industries, but if you can really hone in on one, you can get entrenched. And I think similar to real estate, I imagine these people talk, right? It's a very word of mouth driven industry, and so a lot of them are probably having conversations all the time. It's like, what do you do to generate leads? Now, the one thing that I'd
Yeah.
be interested about is I've typically known that when people have bought leads off of a service like this, they have mixed results. And the reason being is they're selling the same list over and over and over. And so, you're having hundreds of people call the same list. And at this
Mm.
time, like the people that are getting the calls are just fed up and annoyed. because like there's a bunch of
Got it.
unserious characters who are calling them and don't really have the money to move forward on those deals, and they're just wasting their time. And then there's another aspect of it, which is just like, yeah, there ends up being like a bidding war of sorts, because some people are just like, they don't know what they're doing, or they're willing to like blow smoke just to get the contract underneath under their hands. And so, you know, like you're competing with these like wholesale type characters, right?
Yeah.
And so for a house or something that may be worth like 300 grand, they're going to say 350 just to get it under contract. And then like, you know, 30-60 days close and they just try to shovel it off to the next guy and take an assignment fee. And then if
Yeah.
it doesn't happen, like there's little recourse. Like maybe there's, you know, 2 or 3 grand that they spent trying to lock it down with I forget what it's called, but like the one-time fee, just to like a security deposit of earnest money.
Right.
And you know, then like nothing comes out of it. And then they lose the contract, but the seller is very discouraged at this point, because they're just like, man, I just wasted 3 months with this person. And like, I don't even know if I want to sell at this point.
Yeah. So Jack mentioned there's a lot of like businesses like that out there, low quality, you know, giving off low quality leads, making all the same people fight over them. But his
Yeah.
approach has always been quality, 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 right? How can we give people the best possible leads in their specific locality and, you know, sell those off and make our clients happy? You know, he talked a lot about how it's not enough just to give people good data or good leads. You have to then work with your buyer to really help them get the most out of those individuals. Give them all the notes that were taken on those conversations. Give them all the information and context they need to close the sale. Jack mentioned something very obvious to me but we don't talk enough about in business. So he said not enough young entrepreneurs have this like win-win-win mentality, right? A lot of young entrepreneurs are just trying to make a buck and like sell a low quality service. Jack really emphasizes, right? Like, you know, everybody can win. Your team can win, you can win, and your client needs to win. Everybody needs to have a dub in the process. It can't be any other way. Otherwise, those buyers are never going to come back. And I think that really speaks to his business model, which is a productized service. I mean, that's awesome. Like so many agencies are on a month-to-month level or a one-off, right? Like he's built this business to be so high quality that people are subscribe and continue their subscriptions over time. And there's a little bit of churn, but I think the business model really speaks to his own, which is, you know, to just push out quality first and foremost. And I think that takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and speaks to why he's able to have, you know, this outcome of like running a business and working, you know, the Tim Ferriss lifestyle of like a few hours a week.
I love this business. I've got a few questions though. One is, how does he protect his cold callers from getting poached by the people that are buying the list, especially if they're sharing probably the notes, the voice recordings, and like over time they've had enough interaction probably with the team to realize who is probably doing most of the calls.
Yeah. So I don't think that he has, I don't think that there's any connection where those people know who's actually doing the cold calls on the other side to get the good leads. But his team is his most proprietary asset. So it's interesting that you say that. I don't know the specific answer to it. You know, I just want to speak to like how important it is to find like that first key contractor to build your agency or productized service. You know, with me, it was at Our Future, you know, we found one of our editors and then we ended up working with his brother and then he referred us to other people. And it's like, you can then rely on these original contractors who are really fucking good and have the smarts to then go out and recruit others and train them. So I think that's just like a really interesting note there to like how you
Well,
get
that's what
started with
Shepard did,
overseas talent.
right? That's
Yeah,
what
it
Shepard
is.
did, and
Yes.
that's
Yes.
how all of these like recruiting agencies that are built out of the Philippines, Sri Lanka, India, whatever, right? It is like they found one person, and then they've almost given him like a co-founder-esque role. Yeah,
License.
where
Yeah.
it's like, go build out this team. And like they share in the upside
Yeah.
together. And I imagine there's some creativity. Maybe some people just have, you know, higher compensation. Other people are actually may even own equity in these companies. Because I think the contractors are also getting really, really smart and realizing like they hold a lot of leverage and value in
Yeah.
the services they provide.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And we've had that before. We've
scaling
had our
up with people
contractors.
is so important.
We've had that before. We've had our contractors go, you know, figure out a way to work with a competitor. And, you know, there's things you can do, like not having them, you know, have a LinkedIn presence and attached to your company. I think that's just one important thing because the first thing people are going to do, search up your company, look at the employees, and then poach from there. So I think as an agency owner or services business, you need to really protect your talent.
Well, I
That's
will
super
say there
important.
is some sense of loyalty that I've noticed with overseas contractors. It might just be a culture thing, but if you treat them really, really well and you
Yes,
compensate them
that's the
really, really
thing.
well, they
Yes.
will stick with you. And you know, like they want to do right by you. And I don't know if that's as prevalent in American culture. I do think like here, you know, whoever's got the highest dollar, that's probably where your people are going. So
Well,
some
Jack,
interesting
exactly.
reflections there. Yeah.
Jack was telling me that a lot of these Filipino guys he's working with on his team, they said everyone else treats him like shit. And
Yeah.
like, I believe that. I think a lot of contractors are just involved in terrible situations where they're really used as kind of meat in the business process as
Yep.
an input, to making money. And you really have to look at, the future of business. If you're a young entrepreneur, there's a high chance the business you build will depend on independent contractors overseas somewhere. Treat them like a team member, treat them like an employee. The best businesses, right, revolve around excellent leaders who make their team feel like they're all eating and they're all involved and they're part of something bigger. That's something that I was, steadfast in building our future, was making our team of editors feel like they were part of something exciting and big. So I think this is one of the most salient pieces of advice we've shared on the show. Is that if you are going to depend on contractors, make them feel part of a bigger picture, and they will give you great effort and great work product because they're not used to that.
Can you tell me a little bit about the services that they're offering to these folks? So tell me about like the team makeup. Is it like he has one cold caller who services maybe 3 or 4 clients, and they do X amount of calls per day?
Jack is focused on business generation, so actually finding buyers, like the real estate companies that are going to buy the leads. And then his team out there is based on just identifying these leads in the United States for like the home sales. They purchase data and they actually have a few different targeting mechanisms. For example, they said they target elderly people and recent divorcees who are much more likely to be in a position to sell a home. So I think that was like an interesting note. And they have to kind of purchase a lot of expensive data to then give to these cold callers to go out and target. But I don't know how many each calls or how that works. But I know that the team over there is responsible for kind of the bulk of the meat that's sold to the client, which is getting as many of these qualified leads into a bucket and then passing that off. And then Jack kind of will more of handle like the rest of it.
You know, this is really interesting because I imagine, just given how long this concept of lead scraping in real estate has existed, like people have been probably doing this for decades at this point, and now the tools exist that you could probably do, just like an automated search across the entire U.S. and like you have an understanding of just every single house or opportunity that exists.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find new opportunities to give to people when like all of these lists or all of these databases have been created that probably already reflects these houses? I'm curious for
Dude,
you.
I
I
think
have a
I
thought
think at the
on
end,
maybe how you could do this, but I'm curious to hear your take.
well, to speak to what you just said, it's simple. It's, they're actually calling these people, they're building relationships over the phone. There is trust, right? They're actually qualifying folks with the things that don't scale, which is like picking up the phone. And people in this industry, their prospects, the real estate companies, these guys are always on the phone. I play golf with a few real estate agents, and they're always, always on the phone. So I don't know. I think it's definitely to do with the work they're putting in and not depending on these big, massive, shitty lists. They really take ownership over their leads.
My friend, I think we need to find you a job that is very conducive to being on the golf course and enabling you to make money.
Dude, I don't know. I don't know. I see these real estate guys struggling. So, they're
Yeah.
all they're sharky, but for
You
sure it's a
know,
tough space.
it makes me think though, if the traditional sales or go to market channels in your industry have been saturated and maybe overused, I think this is where like maybe where like creative signals are so important. And one idea that comes together comes to my mind based on like the conversation we're having is like, okay, if retirees and maybe even divorcees, that's a little bit harder to figure that one out, but
Public
retirees,
record.
yeah, retirees are kind of more likely to sell, then I would think like, I would be playing a multi-year strategy here, right? So my brother does a lot of stuff in real estate, and the people that he typically closes are people that he's talked to for over 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, right? And so maybe, like a lot of people are targeting them as soon as they do become retirees. Maybe it's like as soon as they turn 60 years old or whatever. But there's got to be signals on like, okay, this person is going to turn, 68, 69 years old. And that is the prime time that we need to hit them. So let's call them now and have this understanding that maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road, they're actually going to be an ideal fit. But because we have a conversation with them and we've got them like comfortable and familiar, they're going to be more likely to sell to us at that point anyways. And
I
so
like it.
it's maybe like a list that, you can call down the road. So it's like, here's a list that you can buy that's going to be optimal for calling or contacting in 2025 or
Yeah.
2026.
Dude, it's like, it's like what Warren Buffett says, like everybody wants to be rich today. They don't want to be, they want to be rich in 10 years, which they can be if they invest in the S&P. So building businesses with that patience in mind to cultivate your garden, right? It's almost like growing a tree.
Dude, I mean, I just have so many ideas for this. Maybe another one is like where you're tracking, and I can't imagine, maybe the younger folks are doing this, but I can't imagine the old school people are doing this. But, tracking people's LinkedIns for a certain area that you can scrape. And it's like as soon as they end a job and it seems like they're very tenured in their career, you hit them as they're going those transition periods. At work or something. Maybe they have to move to a different area. Maybe they're just retiring.
Or you track their kids to be like, oh, is their kid going off to college? Are they going to become empty nesters? That's another signal. There's so many signals you can pick around, like, from society. I just met an entrepreneur building a GDM tool that essentially just allows you to query certain keywords about like what you're selling, and then it'll look for job descriptions that companies currently hiring for that you could potentially sell a product into that space because they are looking for somebody to like actively work on that.
Interesting.
So
What's
a
that
lot of
company
different
called?
signals you can mine. I have to find it for you, but I'll show it to you. He showed me a live demo in San Francisco. He's like, this is what I've built. I'm like, damn, how do you like do that? And he's like, magic.
Very
He was being a
interesting.
little
Well,
cagey, but I'm like,
yeah.
dude, I'm not technical. You think I'm going to steal this, bro? I don't even know what Java is. That's coffee, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, we've got a lot of good stuff here. I think it's probably a good time to wrap up the episode. Appreciate you all tuning in. As always, we love doing this. It's an absolute pleasure to do this week after week. Catch us again next week for another episode of Our Future Podcast. In the meantime, stay frosty.
Stay frosty. Peace.